There we go. Hello,
Got it.
everybody at the Elephant and Castle community. I'm Nick from Retribe. Joining me today is Adrian Hales, who is a transformational coach. And this is our first Facebook Live of 2023. So I'm super stoked that Adrian could come on here. And Adrian, I know you asked what kind of topics we would talk about. And I know the New Year's is always about transformation and resolutions and commitments and intentions. So we'll see how that all fits into the conversation. But just first of all, I'd like to say thanks so much for joining me and Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, happy New Year to you as well, Nick. And we had a conversation last year, and I think it really ties into the importance and the philosophy of Retribe. Really, it's about human beings, it's about connection, it's about purpose. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me and you when we had that conversation is that often in life is when we're going after our goals, we're going after our purpose and our vision in life, whether it be New Year or any time. It's
Mm.
important to have those meaningful conversations that either support us to move forward, that help us, and that nurture other people, because community is massively and hugely important to enable us to fulfill on our dreams.
It is really. I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to search for answers. They're trying to search for solutions, and I think, like you say, they we like Retribe was always kind of set out with the intention of like
Mm.
connection and community and tribes and purpose, and looking over the last few years of human evolution and anthropology and how we actually got to where we got to now. It was because we did belong to a group of people that we contributed to. We had purpose in, and the equation isn't tough. It's just how we fit that into our lives, and make these connections and finding these purposes work for us today. So yeah, just a little brief history about Retribe. But Adrian, can you give everyone
Mm.
a little an introduction to yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I've been on this personal development, spiritual, psychological journey, for sort of 10 years. And I kind of got introduced to coaching and NLP and change over 10 years ago, because I was going through my own kind of personal evolution since leaving the military and rugby, which are traditional tribes, as we're talking about. I kind of lost that sense of belonging, lost that sense of meaning in the world. And obviously, when you're out of those tribes from a psychological point of view, if you look at animals like lions and tigers, when they don't have a tribe or they don't have that belonging or purpose, then obviously what's presented is fears and things that you need to work on. So I took that time using NLP and coaching to, find that sense of belonging, because I was a bit like a lone wolf in the wilderness, to find that sense of belonging, find that sense of purpose. And I found coaching over 10 years ago and had that experience of that, my own, personal transformation that I went through. And, now who I work with is predominantly high achievers, coaches, and my work falls into two or three areas, really. The main area is helping people do the deeper work, the alignment work, the inner work, to help them show up more fulfilled, more expressed, and more happier in life. And that tends to be in kind of like life transformation. And then it also falls into, working with people in business to help them create more clients and increase them, build their business. So that becomes like more solopreneurs. So that's kind of been my journey over the years, and just that love of coaching. But I think if I'm getting to the real essence of what I do is helping people create that inner alignment in their life, so then their outer world looks differently and changes and transforms.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm really interested to know, though, anyone who gets into the military, because I've got my oldest nephew is in the RAF. He works in kind of cyber security and stuff. It's really cool. I don't know an awful lot about it. I don't think he can really tell me an awful lot, but it's a really interesting career. Now, I imagine you got into the military a little bit a while ago. I imagine around 20 years ago.
Yeah, 16. Well, interestingly enough, I was 16 when I went in there. I was
Oh,
15 and
wow.
nine. I was 15 and 9 months, and
Right.
I remember like leaving school and having no qualifications and thinking, no, what am I going to do in my life? So I walked down to the careers office, and yeah, 15 and 9 months, and did 5 years and came out when I was 21. So interesting enough, I met a friend yesterday I hadn't seen in 24 years, who just, as we were talking about, the universe just appeared him. And we were
Yeah.
in phase 1 training 24 years ago, and we were just reminiscing on that. And it's just the most serendipitous moment, but it was it really confirmed. Like my wife said, like, you just felt so like you were like brothers, like you were just talking, you felt so comfortable in each other's presence. And I think that's what the military does do for you, because you go through those challenging situations together. It kind of, you're able to face them with a smile, and it does create that sense of belonging. So the military thing, I've always looked into it and I look, okay, what did create that sense of belonging? And I think it's the stripping back of all the layers of the pretense, getting like stuck in with people, and then like, oh, you're on this with me, you're doing this with me, and then can feel myself now, and you get this special bond that they've got your back and you've got theirs type thing.
I'm wondering, like, I know you mentioned the word lone wolf, and you were talking about it kind of after rugby and stuff, but what were you a lone wolf before you went into the military? Like, what were you like as an early teenager? What was that like?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question, because I had dyslexia when I was a kid, and I found it very difficult at school. So I looked at like other kids, and they were obviously getting praise for getting academic results, and teachers were giving them that praise, and I wasn't getting the knowledge for that. So I was just then naughty. I was just like really naughty. So then in school time, I made friends with people, but I spent a lot of time alone as well. So I did like sports like running and rugby. So I got my acknowledgement through those sports. But in academia, I didn't get that acknowledgement. So I became quite naughty, quite disruptive. So then when I came out, I just got no qualifications. And I think the only qualification that I got, if I remember, is most kicked out of lessons. So my only path really at that time was either go and get a job or join the military.
I think it's really interesting that we look at cultural ideologies of the last, I don't know, I suppose we could say the last 40 years, were for kids in school to be not even guided, but pushed towards higher education, told that you must get a degree to get a job.
Yeah.
So all kind of corporations were just looking for people, unless you had a BA or a BSc or something immediately coming into the job application process, you weren't even going to get a look at. And then also the other things of marrying your college sweetheart, having kids before you're 30, getting a mortgage, all of these things were really kind of these pressures that are put on young people today. And they were when even in my time, 40 years ago. So those pressures that are put upon you, and then you're I would say a disruptive child at school.
Yeah.
Who's feeling, am I going to fit in? Do you remember what that was like before you found that careers office where you could walk like this kind of, what was it going on in your brain of like, was there like the fear basically? I want to know like about that.
Yeah, I think when I was at school, I remember this moment, I remember a few moments, but the one that stood out to me is I sat on the playground and all the other kids were playing, and I knew deep down, I got a sense that I was here to do something special. Like find a purpose or follow a purpose. I kind of sensed that. But at that point, it was like a serendipitous moment that I was here to do something with my life, find a purpose. And as we know, you get those serendipitous moments in the showers or in life, and then all of a sudden the window closed and I kind of forgot about it. So I kind of knew at that point that that I was there to do that. But I think when you're there to brave the wild world, can be like you end up doing things in qualifications that actually you never wanted to do. You actually never had a passion for it. And I think what happens is I work with a lot of people in coaching who have inherited their own parents' criteria for success or society's criteria for success. So before I actually go and set any goals, intentions, and commitments, we have to unpick all of that stuff that they've inherited along the way, the subconscious programming, because they tend to then, leave school, go to university, go and get a corporate job, and they have these passions, these dreams that are within. And there's a part of my poem that says our dreams get left on a dusty shelf and laughed at by everyone else, and we compromise what our soul craves, and we literally become slaves. And I don't mean that in Dexter, I just mean that as a metaphor. We have these dreams and these aspirations, and yet we just put them back on a dusty shelf and we're trying to fulfill that purpose for somebody else. And I think I was rebelling against that. I saw that was the way I was going, and I was maybe subconsciously rebelling. Because my granddad, when I was a young boy, he said, I remember he used to walk me across the fields, and he was a great mentor. And he used to tell stories all the time. Just if I said, make up a story, he would, tell stories. But we were walking in this field one day, and I said, Granddad, what's the key to life? A bit of a random question to kind of ask. And he said, right, go and walk. See all that long grass there? We're walking on this path. He said, see the long grass there? He said, go and walk in it. So I started walking in this long grass, like waist deep. And 100 meters had gone, he could barely see me. And he shouted at me, turn around. So I turned around and he said, now see all the grass that you've trodden? He said, not many people in the world are willing to do that. So he said, go and create your own trail in life instead of walking the path that everybody treads. Wow. And that's what I've discovered, that willingness to go into where there aren't always signposts. And that's the paradox where, the magic happens. So that was quite a nice metaphor where he told me.
Dude, I don't know if your grandfather's still around, but if he is, tell him I'm going to use that. And if he isn't, tell him in the spirit world that I'm going to use that.
Yeah, he passed away when he was 97. He was like an absolute warrior. So to the end, 97. But that was quite a nice metaphor,
Beautiful.
It served me in many ways, but it's also it's like facing your fears and taking life on and showing up to life, but I think the message also is showing up in a balanced way. And I think, and that's certainly been a big theme in my life is making sure that we have balance across our lives, and more importantly with ourselves.
Sorry. No, I want to get into the balance and the things that we talked about with regards to heading into the new year, but I'm still kind of interested in your upbringing. And then a lot of people, I've spoken to a few members of the military, and they say they go into the military because they're maybe there's no other options, or they've been pushed, or they want to get a qualification and they don't want to go to university. And then they do their time. And every single one of them say whatever they went in, their intention of going into the military isn't the main benefit of the bonds that they made.
Yeah.
And, I think I don't know if you're aware of like guys like Sebastian Junger, who wrote the book Tribes, and he talks about like these kind of deep connections that were made with the soldiers, the American soldiers in the Vietnam War. And the coming out of those extremely stressful environments with this band of brothers and sisters, where it's this kind of this thing that you never expected. What were those connections and bonds and community like for you?
Well, as you were saying this, I think I went into the military because school didn't give me that sense of belonging, and I felt kind of like this empty space, like this sense of belonging and purpose to fulfill on. So, I went into the military to find that sense of belonging and purpose. And I'd always enjoyed like sport, a little bit like yourself, always enjoyed that kind of competition and that sport and being around people and teams. So that was a big driver for me, going into the military. And those bonds are they're really special because they're just like, because you experience like, physical and psychological challenges. You're always thrust into this unknown. Yes, there's structure, but there's also like these unknown situations that you're thrust upon in the army, where you have to work together and solve. And at the start, what starts to happen is when you first go in, you're looking after number one, like it's all about you. In training, what happens is you start to look after number one, and you go on parade, and someone will have dirty kit on, or they forgot a piece of kit, and you have this huge blame culture, like, oh well, they forgot their kit, and you're just like looking after number one, survival of the fittest, let everybody go, and they would all get in trouble. But then what started to happen, it was a group like punishment. Then everyone would do press ups, sit ups, running around. So you stop, hold on a minute, like my behavior towards somebody else and looking after my mate also impacts me. there was a real cause and effect relationship with that. And then it all started. I went home after like 6 weeks and I was like, this is psychologically and physically, this is the toughest thing I've done. Like, do I want to go back? And I was contemplating this like week away. And I came back after 6 weeks and then everything just clicked. Is like, what started to happen then, if I went on parade and I had mud on my boot, my mate would say, hey mate, you got mud on your boot. Or if he got his water bottle, hey mate, here's your water bottle. Or, you know, mate, we've got to be there in 5 minutes, we're running late. And this started to become looking after ourselves and then also making sure that all of our fellow soldiers and other human beings were looked after as well. And then what started to happen is when the pressure was increased, that same behavior was replicated. And then people, okay, I can trust this person, I can trust that person. And then it became this, you know, we began to go deeper in our experience together, deeper in our challenges, deeper in our connection to each other. And I remember doing this talk years ago to this company, and the talk was titled, Who Are You That's More Than Your Title? Because we have all of these titles in life, like I'm a CEO, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a TEDx speaker, and all these kind of things. And then people like live by those titles, but it's really important to question, like, who are you that's more than that? And then be that person in life. And I think in the army, all titles, pretense are stripped away, and you just got human beings helping other human beings. And a question that I asked this corporate company when I did this talk, I said, in the next 3 years, if you had to hit this sales number and everyone had to stay, no one could leave, like you couldn't sack anybody, you couldn't recruit anybody different, how would you all treat each other differently? And that was just, you know, that question. Then I was trying to start my talk again, and that question went on like 15 minutes. So it's just really interesting. So that's my experience.
Beautiful. And then I imagine you I think you said you left the military around the age of 21.
Yeah.
So when did the lone wolf come back in phase 2?
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember it was 4:30 in the morning, and it was pitch black, and I was waist deep in clay and mud, and it was like about -1, and we were running up and down this hill, like, you know, covered in mud. And I just thought, I had this question, what am I doing here? You know, this question, like, actually, what am I doing? You know, and in that moment, then I just went and handed my notice in. So then I became a lone wolf when I finished the military. Then it was just back out onto kind of, you know, civvy street. That's when the lone wolf came again. So came back into my life, which was a couple of years, like doing odd jobs and doing, you know, kind of working in warehouse, not really knowing, getting a sense of where I was going. And then I got this opportunity to go and play rugby sevens in Fiji. So this like team on the Super Series, like, which is the top 7 series in the UK, said, hey, do you want to come to Fiji and play? So I was lucky enough when I was in the military to play like professional sport. And I said yes. And then I came back, and I was working at Tesco's at the time, and it was working on a night shift. And it sounds really simple, but I was on the drink section before I left. And then I came back and they put me on the dog food section. And that was just like, hold on a minute, I'm not on the drinks, I've been demoted to this dog food section.
I didn't know there's hierarchy in
yeah,
Tesco.
there's a hierarchy in Tesco. And it was good lifting. And I thought, what? And then again, that question, like, where am I going? Who am I? You know, you have that. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. And then literally the next day, my mate rang me and said, look, I saw you play amazing. You were the best player in one of the best players in Fiji. I put you in touch with the rugby club. And I rang the guy messaged me and said, we've heard great things about you. He drove down the next day and then offered me a contract. And there, and my dad, because we ran pubs at the time with my dad, there was a contract like to play rugby, you know, free accommodation and a match bonus, training bonus, and a monthly fee. And I just then a week later, I was living in this flat and I was playing National League rugby. And just that was a kind of life-changing moment. But I suppose on all of those, as I'm reflecting, talking to you, because they're really awesome questions, is just having that courage to follow the trail, go into the uncertainty, and also making sure you've got people around you as you do that as well.
Yeah.
The lone
Well,
wolf doesn't work on your own. It has to be with people,
Your story is so I think I even wrote when I started Retribe the idea of, and it went from connection to disconnection back to connection again.
Yeah.
And the first connection is a connection we have with our immediate family. Then we can become disconnected. Then we find connections again. Then we can become disconnected. And yours very much is a story of connection, disconnection, connection. And I imagine with the rugby, after the rugby, is there another disconnection?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about it.
Yeah, so the rugby was awesome. I played 10 years National League, playing all over the place. And then kind of about 32, 33. So I played and I was renowned for scoring tries. So I was a national try scorer record. Teams brought me on and I'd just score. That was my kind of bag. I was really fast for my size. I got these little niggling injuries. You might be familiar with this if you've got any injuries, playing ice hockey. I think you played, didn't you? That was so. Then you get like little niggling injuries, just like little lower back pain and groin pain. But you kind of man up and you crack up. You get on with it. But it was starting to affect me at that point. So I didn't take any time off and slow down. And I worked with this kind of like psychologist guy, and he helped me with all these anchors that you put on your, your kind of arm straps, and it worked to a degree. But I was trying to force this thing that I'd lost love for. I just lost the love for the game. I'd lost that desire because a lot of the teams knew me. Like when I had this deeper connection with one of my teams, the coach knew me, and he gave me like autonomy to do what I needed to do, trusting my intuition and playing how I wanted to play. And I was just then mercurial at doing that. But as soon as I came out and I worked in teams where they're like, well, you can't be yourself in this team. You've got to fit into this structure. It didn't tend to work for me. And then I went through 2 or 3 clubs. It didn't work. And then I found a love for coaching. And I took over this sales team. We're getting a theme here, Nick. I took over this sales team. And this sales team had really low morale. And they were low on the sales targets. And my GM at the time said to me, hey, would you like to learn this thing called coaching? And I was like, okay, well, kind of had some coaching, but I don't really know what it is. And they said, hey, like use this model, the 4-part model called Grow. This is like over 10 years ago. And I just started using this model, simple model with the team, and they started to change their performance. So I did coaching, then did incentivizing, and then brought us together as a team all the time, inspiring each other and helping each other in this room. And we just turned the target around and everyone was more happy and fulfilled. And then we went into this kind of sales training one day, and my head was moving, my body was moving. I was feeling more deeply connected to people. Just very bizarre. It was almost like someone put something in my drink. And I said to the guy, like, what's in this training? And they're like, oh, well, we just use NLP. And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. And then I just had that question, what if you could combine NLP with coaching? Did some research, and obviously there's lots of NLP coaching. And then we just started to kind of get the love for just working with people. And then that was the part where like I had to let go of something that had got me that port, knowing it wasn't going to serve me any longer. So I had to let go of rugby, like kind of 32, something that I've been playing since I was 5 years old, but to a high level from sort of 17. I had to let that go and then walk into the trail, walk into the unknown, and embrace this thing that excited me, that I had a love for, and that was kind of 10 years ago.
Amazing. I love the journey. I love where you are right now, and you said a word that I want to get into right now, and that word was spirituality.
Yeah.
So how does a ex-military person, rugby player, a Tesco worker, embrace the idea? I'm not saying that if you're any of those, you're not, but the archetype of a rugby player and someone in the military is that, I mean, the word spirituality it would be scoffed at. So I'm wondering now about your kind of ideas and connections to an energy or to mindfulness in that kind of way. Where was that seed? Where did you feel that in your body, and how did that grow?
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing. And I think with spirituality, what we have to let go of is obviously we acknowledge people's religions, we acknowledge that people have faith. The spirituality to me is the embracing of, or the connection to the whole, is the connection to ourselves, is connection to nature, and to realizing that we are life itself, and life is there to support us. It is part of us. We are life. So the spirituality comes from the awakening that you get from the mind. That we have this conditioning and this mind. We spoke about it earlier from school, like parents and society. The mind is constantly going, but it's not where our authority is in life. Our authority comes from the body, which is the subconscious, which is the rest of the body. So my kind of belief is that spirituality to me is the connection to our essential nature, which is here, and the connection to the outer world, and dancing with the flow of life, and showing up to life in a direction where you truly want to go, what excites you, not what drains you, and then responding to life rather than forcing life. So I was on holiday. I'll give you a metaphor. And then I'll kind of tell you, how I kind of got into it. But me and my wife were on holiday, and so we're swimming out in the ocean, and I put these goggles on and a scuba diving hat and a snorkel, and I thought, well, my mind said, wouldn't it be cool if you could like try and catch some fish with your hands? So I started swimming around, catching these fish and trying to grab these fish. And after about an hour, I came up to the surface, just started to thought I was absolutely exhausted. My wife said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just trying to catch these fish. She goes, that's impossible. I thought I'll just try it. Exhausted, I kind of swam back to the beach and sat down on the beach in the sand and just caught my breath back. And then after about 5 minutes, I felt this little nibble on my feet and my ankles. And the fish started like coming to me and started nibbling me. So life came to me rather than me trying to thrash and trying to take life. So that's a great metaphor, and that life is for us and comes to us. And I think over the years, just that I got into spirituality for the love of this coaching and unpicking the subconscious, and going to coaching workshops, getting certifications, doing all the exercises, working with clients. And over that time, started to peel back the onion layers. People call it, peel back the onion, to find that there's nothing in the middle apart from space. And then once you're in that space, you're connected to your being, and you're connected to the world. It sounds very philosophical, but from that place, then we can show up to life and respond, in a much more powerful way when we're connected to our body. That's been my experience.
Beautiful. Dancing with the flow of life, you said. I can't think of that's it. Like what, and I love it when you asked your granddad about what's the meaning of life. And people, like, we're always on the search for this, and you think about it in logical ways. And for me, it's really super simple when I can say that my spirituality, or my idea of the universe, is that there's this energy that flows through everything, and that we as these, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the body, but like a meat suit or a scaffolding, or however people want to call it, I think the whole thing is connected and is spirit. Now that I've learned that, mind, body, spirit is all one thing. And I think 80 years we've roughly got on this planet, this floating rock that's spinning through the universe, the tens of thousands of miles an hour, and the infinity of the universe. And you just think that over the billions of years of time that they can actually measure, there's more to just these 80 years on this rock. And I figured that for me, the simplicity of the meaning of why we are here is simple. I'm here to help my fellow people. We're here to survive and thrive and grow and learn. I think so that this is just a thing of people say we're spirits having a human experience.
Yeah.
And I really like that I'm here I'm just here to learn. I'm here to be of this earth, and I'm here to help my fellow human beings the way I'm really well designed at, which is working with men in recovery. I think, Adrian, out of my almost 52 years on this planet, there's only one thing I say that I'm 100% confident saying I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And that's working with men in recovery. I have no, I think I've got the highest qualification you could ever have. I'm a PhD in working with men in recovery.
Yeah.
Even though there are no qualifications in that. All the other stuff I'm learning, and it's all part of. And I think this metaphor that you talked about the idea of intentions. Well, we talked about the idea of intentions, and we come into a new year and we say, let's have an intention for this year.
Yeah.
Or what's the words? Resolutions, New Year's resolutions. Everyone's like, oh, don't make resolutions because you're going to break them. And I'm like, fine. But as long as you say like a tile on a roof, right? One tile is a set of New Year's resolutions, and you didn't quite complete it. That's okay.
Yeah.
But the next year you form another and another and another, and year upon year, and building of these resolutions and these ideas that are all based around personal growth and self-development. And then so you're gonna have your roof that's going to be watertight. It's going to be amazing. So let's get into this. Let's get into the idea of we're in the new year 2023. A lot of people are saying and what are your suggestions or considerations to people who are like, I've set these intentions for myself and these resolutions, and how do you work with your clients around those words?
I think intentions and resolutions, I think they're useful because it does provide a focus. It's like, at least we're doing something, like intentions and resolutions. It's like, and one way I'd like to look at it slightly differently is, I remember when I was working with my coach, and it was always like a question which a lot of people might be asking now, which he used to ask initially, was, what do you want? But when we say what do you want, it presupposes we don't have it. So actually the word want is wanton, which is, from an etymology standpoint, is lack. We're lacking in something. And a more useful question I found to ask is, where are we going? Because that implies a direction. And the beautiful thing about direction is that there'll be places we have been that are familiar, that we can, our skills, our experience, our talents will support us in. And there'll also be areas that don't have signposts that we haven't been. So there'll be signposted areas and unsignposted areas. So I think direction is more important. I think it is much more important, because we can then manage our energy. Are we on our path? Are we on that direction? And we can kind of course correct. I think resolutions is what everyone else says, like have the resolutions. Are you doing your resolutions this year? And it becomes like your sense checking externally what can only come internally. So it's reverse engineering it and asking, where am I going, and walking into that, not like where's everyone else going and trying to fit yourself into that. I'm not saying it's not useful, but a more useful question is, where are you going? I found.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that we tend to put a lot of pressures on ourselves, with things like resolutions. I say, like, whatever it is that you're going to use, whatever the intention is just, like I say, normally it is around losing weight or going to the gym, or those are amazing things, and they can taper off. But what I've learned over the years, again, is it is about where I'm going. It is about the destination of purpose. And I think really, like, all the physical and nutrition things are good, but the idea of where you are going, how do you help a client or people focus on that? Where am I going? How do they know?
Yeah.
How do they figure out? What are the tools that you use to try to figure out that kind of, the grass is all ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
Where am I going? Where am I going?
Yeah, I think, like, it's interesting to consider, where are you going? And also, like, getting like a notepad, drawing a line down the middle, what excites you and what drains you. Like, and it's like, we tolerate so much in our life. We tolerate, like, with jobs, relationships, like, we tolerate stuff from ourselves. And it's important to be authentic about that. before we can start moving forward. We've got to be authentic about where we're inauthentic as well in life to be able to go through that. So where are you going and what excites you, and then also what drains you, and then cutting out a lot of that what drains you it is important, and building your life that's in alignment with what excites you, and where are you going. And I think one of the things that I learned is, like, we've got to look at what are we tolerating, where we're holding ourselves back, what we're accepting that we're not okay with, where we're people pleasing. All of these things have an impact on the direction that we're going and how fast we're going in that direction and how fulfilled we are in that direction. So I think it's really important to ask questions like, what are we tolerating? Where are we not being responsible in life? Because I think that is equally important to set a direction and then do the deeper work on actually, our blind spots, our subconscious beliefs and subconscious ways of being. I think that's hugely important to get clear on that. And then some of this, the work that I do is kind of powerful, a little bit woo-woo. So, some of the tools that I work with clients is I do projective. I work projectively and I work embodied. So then I help people build this picture through them of their life and help them live into that. So their life that they're creating came from their deepest sense of identity. So I think that's really important, is to use different tools, to have 2 or 3 different tools that you can self-coach with. There's loads of different tools that you can use, and also getting a coach is important as well, to help replay and reflect back things that you can't see and help you hold you accountable, call you out on things that you might be BSing yourself about. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but just things where you're tolerating that you can't see. So one of the biggest things for me over the years of working with clients is coaching them, getting my own coach, and also doing journaling, meditation, cold therapy, those types of things that help me on that journey. And I do the same things with clients.
In your bio, you help clients do deep inner work, and as soon as I hear the word deep, I think of people like Freud. I think of Jung, and I think of modern day people like Paul Chek and how the shadow work, doing the shadow work, going in and then you talk about the word identity, and how we as people probably have different personas of ourselves, whether it's at home or at work or rec sport, or we want people to see a certain idea of who we are. And then, so I want to get to that quickly, but I also want to get to the trust element of having a coach, because how many, in the beginning, do clients normally tell you what they think you want to hear? And how long does it take for you to be able to actually say, hey, hang on a second, is that really the truth? Or I don't know how you would word it, but can we rephrase it something like this so that they're not bullshitting you, so that you can get to the truth, to get to that deep inner shadow work?
It's really interesting, because obviously, how I look at it is language is when people speak, it's just a kind of surface interpretation of what's going on. So the way that I kind of work with clients is I use projective techniques, which when you first start working with a client, they're telling you what they want you to hear, but I already know where they're at, just because I've done so much, years of this. I intuitively know where they're at. Now, I'm not always going to point that out, but I'm going to help them come to that conclusion over however long that takes that person, over 2 or 3 sessions, 4 or 5 sessions, 6 months. I'm going to help them come to that conclusion, because you've got to discern as a coach, is it right now for this moment for me to point that out, or am I going to set some homework, or is that going to come through in a couple of weeks? They're going to get that insight. And I think I use in the sessions with people, I use it's called non-violent communication. So when you said that sounds like, when you said that, I feel, I get a sense, and you're replaying back this information in a soft way, in a softer way, and then people get huge insights from that. But how I do that is, I and work with clients is projective techniques, where they are projecting their inner world using art and colors. They don't have to get stuck in language. A lot of coaches get stuck in language, then it becomes a table tennis match. So using like colors, metaphors, symbols, and getting clients to explain the goals, their ambitions, and what they're struggling with, their deeper work, using this art, and then taking them through a very kind of intuitive and powerful process to help them see what's really going on internally. So it helps them communicate in a different way. It's very powerful. And then using embodied techniques, so going within and connecting with the heart, the mind, the gut, and connecting with the autonomic system and the pelvic system, because they all have different needs and wants and desires. So it's connecting with all of those and creating alignment internally, and then using projective to create the alignment externally and then live into that. So it's been a years of work and study and application of this, and it's just, that's essentially becomes my work. And it becomes like, yes, sometimes people get emotional and cry, and sometimes people have this huge sense of joy, but it's also very fun as well. It's very creative and fun. And we put humor in there as well. It's not, when we say shadow and deep work, people think, oh my God, you know, fire and terror, but it's not. It's just, it can be, you know, really fun and, you know, very exploratory. Like, I was working with this lady from Canada, and she's a very powerful lady. She's been coaching for years, and started working with her, and we got into like, what is the dream? And the dream came out was, I want to create this like charity for the youth, and I want to be an art, you know, be an artist again, but I can't have that. And then we started working with that, and we're doing the deeper work, the integration work, and literally within about 6 months, their whole energy changed. So when they showed up to calls with clients and then they're coaching, their whole energy changed. And then they started to enroll clients at a higher fee and more aligned clients. Like, they were enrolling clients at like 3 to 5K, more aligned, more energized clients, because they're connected with their deepest sense of self. And then they started to paint these unbelievable pictures, like paintings, like this expression wanted to come through, and they started to paint these amazing pictures. And like, these are like, could go in a gallery. They didn't have it, they weren't copying it, it was coming through them. These beautifully painted pictures of people's faces and all this kind of stuff. And then they created this non-for-profit. So they're working with the youth now. And that was never, none of that was created externally. None of it was a goal to live into. None of it was someone else's expectations. None of it was this fear to kind of, oh, I've got to keep it, you know, keep up the Joneses. That was created through them. And yeah, it's just a beautiful expression of someone on purpose, which is obviously massive. You know, what you're all about, Nick, is helping people be on purpose. And I think that's so fulfilling that we can help people actually recognize the work they love, their purpose, and help them express that into the world. Because as you said, we've got this one life, and it's just, we're on this rock, and it's just like, you know, what would stop us from doing that?
What are we going to do with it? And I know now it isn't about the car or the house. It is about helping people. So it's about me helping people so that ultimately they can end up helping people. Yeah. Whatever that purpose is, it tends to be around being of service. So that, and whatever type of service that is, it's normally to help somebody, which is a beautiful thing. Can you imagine if the world, everyone just started to work in a way of purpose of trying to help someone else other than themselves?
Yeah.
Then they would themselves we would all flourish, and it would be beautiful. But we're running out of time, and I want to ask you a big question here.
That's all good.
When you ask somebody, where are they going? Is it a destination or is it a journey?
I would say that it's a journey. That's a really good observation. Yeah, I would say it's more of a journey. And I think another question to follow that, are you willing?
Yeah. You
know, are you willing to live your dreams? Are you willing to, you know, create a 6-figure business? Are you willing to be an artist? Are you willing to be a speaker? Because the willingness is the fuel to start the journey. Yeah. And also unwillingness provides a lot of motivation as well. Are you willing to keep tolerating yourself being in a bad relationship? Are you willing to keep living paycheck to paycheck? Are you willing to never have your art in the world? And if you say, no, I'm unwilling, that also provides that motivation as well. So those questions, I think, are important, before you ask where you're going. And in answer to your question simply, yeah, it is a journey.
I love it, brother. What a way to end
Yeah.
our first live of 2023. You've been amazing.
Yes.
I'd like to get you on a guest again. Maybe in a few months I'd like to do a little bit more of a deep dive into your deep dives, because I don't want to say it's art therapy, but the artwork is something that for some reason, Adrian, I don't know why, it's come out of me in the last couple of weeks. I'm not an artist. I don't know how to. I was just showing my 6-year-old my extent of drawing a stickman, and that's it. But I've also been working with some youth in the sports environment, and I've been thinking about something just came to me when I was at an event with them, that we need to start rather than them just out on the ice skating, we need to get them into a classroom and start exploring some art. Because I think that, and I don't know where it came from, but now that you've been talking about it, I think I want to try to do a little bit more of investigating into that. I think that could be a key of unlocking some emotional, some dealing with emotions. So anyway, buddy, listen, thanks so much. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, just Adrian Hales on LinkedIn. Just get in touch with me there, connect with me. And just want to also acknowledge you, Nick, for the work that you're doing. It's very powerful work. And it seems to me that you're creating your trail, you're on your path. And I can see why a lot of people choose to work with you in recovery, because you've got a very loving, grounded energy, and you make people feel that deep sense of belonging. So I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing, because it takes something to keep showing up and providing this contribution to people out there and people out there you might never meet, and that's a powerful thing in the world.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I appreciate it. I'm sure that if we were both to reach out our hands in that long grass, we would probably touch. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, and let's get you on again in a few months.
Yeah, I'd love
like
to.
I say, I want to try to really go down into that. And thanks everybody for joining us. Let's get 2023 off to willingness and action, I think, are the keys. And I will this week again. We will have another Facebook Live. Fatima, who is in Portugal, she's coming back, and we're going to be talking all things food and recovery and beautiful stuff with her. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you on Thursday at 11 a.m. And thanks again, Adrian. Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year.